The colonel ordered her out of the line, until she removed her glove and exposed the medal no one was allowed to earn. They said the winter of 1949 was one of the cruelest in the Northern Front. Snow fell not like flakes, but like pieces of shattered glass, sharp, relentless, slicing through every layer of wool and discipline the soldiers carried on their backs. The wind howled down the valley as if the mountains themselves were warning the battalion to turn back. And yet, on that bitter morning, hundreds of soldiers stood in formation, boots buried in snow, breaths rising in frozen clouds, waiting for the inspection they feared even more than the cold. At the far end of the line stood Lieutenant Maeve Callahan, the only woman in the battalion. Her uniform was crisp, her posture unshaken, but a quiet tremor lived beneath her ribs. She had crossed borders, broken rules, and survived battles that swallowed entire platoons, but standing here, in front of men who never believed she belonged, somehow felt like the hardest confrontation of all. What no one in that formation knew was that Maeve had barely slept the night before. She had spent hours staring at her reflection in the small steel mirror above her bunk, wondering if history would ever make room for someone like her. She wasn't fighting only for a position in the line. She was fighting for every woman who had ever been told she was not enough. The memory of her mother's last words echoed in her chest. Someday the world will see you, Maeve. Maybe not today, but one day. That hope kept her upright when everything else around her felt frozen and hostile. Colonel Barrett, the man whose stare could freeze water faster than any winter storm, strode across the line of soldiers. Every step was deliberate, heavy, carrying decades of hardened tradition. He nodded at each soldier with the same narrow approval. But the moment he reached Maeve, he stopped as if he had hit an invisible wall. "Lieutenant," he said, voice cutting through the silence. "Step out of the line." Every head turned. The crunch of her boots on snow echoed louder than any battlefield memory. Maeve steadied her breath. "Sir, I have completed every qualification required to stand here." His jaw tightened. "You may have completed courses, Callahan, but you do not belong in combat command. Not here. Not under my watch. Step back." A ripple of murmurs flowed through the formation. Some looked away in discomfort. Others watched, waiting for the moment she would break. But Maeve did not flinch. "Sir," she said softly, "I'd like permission to speak." "Denied," he snapped. "You are out of position." The wind screamed through the valley, carrying the weight of every injustice she had swallowed over the years. She had endured the taunts during training, "Go home, sweetheart." She had survived commanders who refused to call her by rank. She had watched younger, less capable officers rise faster than she ever could. And yet she stayed. Not for glory. Not even for recognition. But because she believed, truly, fiercely, that service meant something deeper than anyone around her understood. She lifted her chin. "Sir, you once said respect is earned on the battlefield. May I show you something I earned?" The colonel frowned. This is not the time, but Maeve was already removing her glove. The leather slipped from her fingers and revealed a ribbon looped around her wrist. A medal, small, battered, but unmistakable, glinted under the weak morning sun. The soldiers inhaled sharply. It wasn't just any medal. It was a Black Star insignia, an unspoken legend among soldiers, whispered in the barracks, denied in official records, awarded only in shadows. A recognition given solely to those who had performed a rescue mission so impossible, so deadly, that even the military refused to document it. A medal no one was supposed to earn. A medal many believed didn't even exist. Yet there it was, hanging from her wrist, shimmering like defiance. Colonel Barrett's eyes widened, not in anger, but in disbelief. Where did you get that?" Maeve didn't answer immediately. Her throat tightened, memories flooding back like ghosts from the jungle. The mission that took her team of 6 into enemy territory and returned only one survivor. She didn't like telling the story, but today she needed to. So she breathed in the cold air and began. 40 miles south of the Kwang River," she said quietly, "our reconnaissance plane was shot down. Intelligence was wrong. A small extraction turned into a trap. Sergeant Tomas, Corporal Hale, Captain Reddington. All wounded. We hid in the jungle for 3 nights while they hunted us. They were closing in. Even the wind seemed to stop to listen. She continued, voice steady but heavy with grief. I had 2 choices: leave the injured behind, or drag every single one of them through the mud, blood, and fire until we reached the evac coordinates. I carried Tomas on my back when he could no longer breathe through the pain. I lifted Hale out of the river when he nearly drowned. And when Captain Reddington, when he collapsed, her voice broke, just once. I promised them I wouldn't leave anyone behind. Not even if it cost me my life. Soldiers in the line swallowed hard. The colonel looked at her. The frost in his eyes melting as he realized what stood before him wasn't just a woman. It wasn't even just a soldier. It was someone forged in a place he had never dared to step. By the time evac arrived, she said, I had lost feeling in both legs. But all 3 of them were alive. That's when the commander placed this medal in my hand. He said he'd deny giving it to me if anyone asked. He said the world wasn't ready for a woman to earn it. A long, brittle silence stretched across the snow-covered field. Then Maeve lifted her wrist toward the colonel. I don't need recognition, she said gently. But I do need a place to stand. A place where my service means something. A place where my blood counts the same as anyone else's. The colonel inhaled slowly, visibly shaken. The soldiers were no longer looking at Maeve like an outsider. No more whispers, no more doubt. They looked at her the way soldiers look at heroes. With awe, with respect, with the silent wish that they could be even half as brave. In that moment, everything changed. Colonel Barrett straightened his spine. For the first time since she joined the battalion, his tone softened, not condescending, not wary, but genuinely human. Lieutenant Callahan, he said, voice lower, step back into the line. Maeve blinked. Sir? You heard me. A pause, and God help me, thank you for your service. The battalion, hundreds of men hardened by war, rose taller than before. Some swallowed emotion they didn't know how to express. Others lowered their eyes, ashamed of the assumptions they had made. But they all felt the same shift inside them. Maeve stepped back into formation, boots sinking into the snow with a steadiness she had never felt before. For the first time in her career, she wasn't fighting to belong. She belonged. And the men beside her knew it too. When the wind moved again, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like applause. The colonel paced forward, but every few seconds he glanced back at Maeve, at the medal that wasn't supposed to exist, at the soldier who had carried 3 men through hell, at the proof that courage has no gender, no mold, no limitation. Respect had finally been earned, and this time, it was earned in the open. The soldiers stood taller. The torch of history burned brighter. And the woman with the forbidden medal remained unshaken, unstoppable, unforgettable. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful Untold histories.